All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We're glad you're here for the discussion today. My name is Ben Maxwell. I'm the Education Director at Storyboard EMP. We also have Appraiser eLearning and Agent eLearning as two of our subsidiary companies. Today's webinar, Navigating URAR, or the new UAD 3.6, and what it means for real estate agents. We're going to talk today about a part of the community that I feel like has been a little bit underserved in this big change, which is nobody's been talking enough about what is this, how's this going to impact other professionals like real estate agents. This is a big change, and a lot of people have been focusing on the URAR and the impact to the appraisers and the valuation and lending community. But today, I'm thrilled to have Candy Cooke, who's a partner at Agent eLearning and who's been in the business for a long time, both as a broker and an appraiser, and Craig Capilla, who's a frequent contributor for us, who's an attorney who specializes in licensing and liability claims for real estate agents and appraisers. We're going to talk today about bridging the gap of understanding of what this change means specifically to real estate agents. And so we're glad you're here. This is being recorded. And if you have to leave early, don't worry, you will get access to the recording. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Craig and Candy and let them introduce themselves, and we'll get started. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Craig, you're on the hot seat.
All right, I'm up first to the man who deserves no introduction. Well, it's great, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It's always a blast to do this. So I appreciate the invite and the opportunity. As Ben mentioned, my name is Craig Capilla. I'm an attorney based in the Chicago area. I work a lot in real estate and valuation concerns, both residential and commercial real estate, and then in valuation and lending. I do a lot with licensing and also liability matters. So civil suits, interfacing with government agencies and the like. And I always appreciate the opportunity to get together and have these conversations. Often these conversations are born of a conversation between Candy and myself, or Ben and myself, or the three of us when we run into each other at some location, which happens altogether quite frequently. I mean, I don't know. I probably haven't seen you all in a couple of weeks, and Candy, what? I guess I'll see you again in another couple of weeks. So I guess that's how that works these days. But again, welcome everyone, and I look forward to having this chat with you all today. So Candy, back to you.
Awesome. So I'm Candy Cooke. I'm a broker and a certified general appraiser. I hate to say, I'll just say 4 decades in doing this. Half of you all go, we weren't even born when you started, which just makes me nuts. I've watched the changes coming up over the years, and then I started teaching. I found that I was able to convey information from one side of real estate to the other side. As Craig said, we started running into each other and we have these conversations. Our conversations are kind of interesting because they start, I believe this conversation started in Vegas and it's bounced through a couple other scenarios. And now here we are, and we just were talking about that Craig and I will be at NAR NXT in Houston. So you may find us wandering around being kind of chatty. So hopefully we'll give you information. Reach out to us if you see us, talk to us, ask us questions. We'll try to help out. Okay, Craig, what are we doing with this URAR? Oh, wait, what's a URAR?
Yeah, let's go there first, right? This is a wild thing to me, and I'm realizing more and more how important it is to have this conversation, because you and I can slip into that talk fairly easily. We've been swimming in it and or drowning in it for however long now. But we're talking about the residential appraisal form, specifically residential lending intended to go to the GSEs, such as Fannie and Freddie. And it pops up on FHA assignments. It frankly gets used in VA assignments as well. But it's the universal report form for appraisals that goes into the residential lending area. And we're talking across the board. We're talking single family residences, but it's going to hit everything else too. It's going to hit multi-units. It's going to hit condo form, everything else. What's happening now, we have not undergone a significant change in the reporting of this since 2005, when these current forms came out. There was a data reporting change in 2009, which really just was a series of codes, what became the uniform data set. So it forced the valuation pros to have to style their info differently, but the mechanics of it were the same, other than we were just using consistent coding at that point, really, if we're being blunt about this. So the GSEs could go ahead and scrape all the data and build out their database. That's all they were looking for, was they were looking for consistency. Lo and behold, 20 years later, we are now turning the valuation world on its head. So part of it is, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? I mean, my 2 cents on this is because it's been 20 years, the world has changed. And I think there is some truth to that. But the reality of it is, this is probably a long overdue change. But there is also an attempt here to make the platform, it's no longer the appraisal report. It's now going to be a reporting format. It is a dynamic reporting system. The idea here is to actually make it more useful for risk analysis. Candy, what are your thoughts? Like, are you getting the same read why we're here?
Yeah, and I'm going to come in from the other side. I'm going to come in because I actually teach a class that crosses over. I put an appraisal report up and show agents and brokers what it looks like on the backside. They see the nice 6-page report that's always the same way. And then I start clicking on blanks, and all of a sudden there's all kinds of extra stuff popping up. What I've said, and I've started teaching in this in some of my classes, saying, you guys, the professionals who are not appraisers have been on the side of, they'd read a report and then it'd say, see attached addenda, see attached addenda, see attached addenda. And then ANSI, the square footage measuring rule came in. Well, there weren't blanks for all the sections that ANSI required us to do. So we had above grade, below grade. We had the attached or detached units. We had below ceiling height, all of these weird little things. I can't tell you how many times I hear the appraisers didn't give us credit for the lower level. Texas doesn't have basements. We have walkout basements, but they're just to the outside. It's living space. So what I'm teaching, and maybe Craig, maybe I'm not saying it in words that everybody understands, but when you go to read the report, there should be all of this data contained in this dynamic form. So you're not flipping through 20 pages trying to figure out where it says this and where it says this. And what do you mean you're not counting below grade and all of this stuff? It should be visible. Correct?
Absolutely. 100% agree. I think that's going to make a big difference in the end use of the product. Is it's supposed to be all steak, less sizzle, right? You're supposed to be in a scenario now where when you get to the end of this, it's going to actually cover relevant details and analysis, but you're not going to have to wade through the mess of, all right, I know the bottom half of page 2 and the next 2 pages don't really contain anything that I need for this assignment, but there's some boxes there. The appraiser had to fill those boxes to move on. No, they don't. Not anymore. And that's sort of the point. But the flip side of that too is the appraiser is now going to have to fill in things that they probably already should have been filling in, but they've maybe been glossing over that part because there's, nobody reads that anyway. We don't care. Well, guess what? As a way of trying to reduce risk and plug some of those holes, this updated format is going to require the appraiser to actually identify, comment on something that they otherwise would have glossed over, or they're not going to be able to move forward and complete the assignment. And I think that's going to be an interesting point of friction early on as everyone's getting used to this. For the agents in the audience today, what are we going to notice that's different? Well, hopefully the end product that you get to see is going to be more relevant and it's going to make some more sense. But on the front end, I'm concerned isn't necessarily the right word, but I am expecting that there will be some fits and starts at the inspection with follow-up communications, that the appraiser is going to identify that they missed things because it's new to them too, and they're going to have to reach out again, and they're going to have to ask more questions. They're going to have to obtain more information. And they're going to have to do something with that, or they're not going to be able to complete the assignment.
Okay, Craig, I think you're saying that the appraisers are going to have to talk to the agents, and the agents are going to have to talk to the appraisers. Am I catching this in your conversation?
Yeah, and I will probably dial it up a little bit. The appraisers are going to have to reach out to the agents. The agents are going to need to take that call or call them back. All right. Let me be a little bit more blunt about where that one is, because we've seen that happen before. I mean, the first thing we saw, now, again, Candy and I have been swimming in this for a while, so this new process has been 8 years in the making. It certainly doesn't feel new to us at this point. It's taken us an 8-year road to getting here. But what we started hearing in the outset of this, when it was like, all right, we're set in stone now, this is the date that we're going to launch, and it's happening. We caught it from both ends, I think, at various conferences that we were both at. There was this idea of appraisers. I mean, just with the vapors. Well, does this mean I'm going to have to reach out to the broker and ask questions? Like, that was always part of the job. But the flip side of that was, for the agents and brokers out there, yeah, we really do need you to pick up the phone and answer those questions.
Yes.
This has to be cooperative and collaborative, or nobody's going to get what they want out of this, which is to get the deal done.
It's going to take longer. It's in the beginning is what we're trying to say to everybody, is that, everybody's learning. Everybody's trying to figure out. A lot of the information, when the appraiser's out at the property, it's not going to be a 10, 15 minutes walking through with a clipboard. They're going to be filling out the data on a device. Okay, it's going to take longer in the field, but if they learn to do it right, when they get back to their office, most of the input has already been done.
Right. And again, I think we're solving some issues that have been baked into this for a while. I mean, there are those appraisers out there, and I guess thank God for that, because they're the appraisers that are going to put my kids through college. But there are appraisers out there that, I can do my inspection in 10 minutes or less. Well, that was never really the right answer to begin with. There should have been actually thorough inspection, measurements, consideration, walkthrough, all of that. I do think we're going to see, particularly early on, quite a growth in the amount of time that the appraiser is on site in order for them to become familiar with, what am I really going to have to observe, identify, comment on. But on the back end of all of that, again, some of these processes are going to be more efficient. They're going to become more streamlined if the agents are also being sure that they input appropriate and correct information about the listing at the outset. If that's already in there and it's available to the appraiser, it's going to make this a lot more efficient and a lot more smooth. So again, I think it's incumbent on both sides of this equation. Everybody has to up their game a little bit. For the appraisers, I think some of it's stuff that already should have been going on to some extent. And there are too many folks out there that are, unfortunately, I think, are form fillers rather than, the good appraisers out there, I think they know who they are.
They are.
And the bad appraisers out there don't know that they are. Okay. So that's an issue that is going to cure itself to some extent. But I think part of why we wanted to have this conversation and present it to be somewhat more agent focused is, folks, this whole system is going to really need the help of the agents a lot, or the appraiser is not really going to have the opportunity, the access, the ability to obtain the information they need and to do what they do. And that's a big deal. And so I think that's probably, if we're broadcasting anything, if we're shouting from the rooftops on anything here, it's, hey, agents, this is going to look different. And here's your call to action. Here's what needs to happen to make sure this works well.
So I think some of the appraisers probably are thinking, well, she just dinged us for not knowing the technology. No, I'm not. I'm saying the agents need to learn and be educated about this. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a classroom and somebody says, why do we have to do the appraiser's job? And I said, it's not the appraiser's job. It's a collaboration. Learn to put everything into MLS. And I started the other day talking about guest houses. And then we got into all the different names that can go for that. Guest quarters, casitas, all the craziness. And I said, why don't you put the information in as an attachment in MLS so that it's already there? And somebody said, why would we do that? And I said, because otherwise you're going to get phone call after phone call asking questions. So if we can collaborate, we can talk about this. Can we talk to the different people serving on MLS and say, we might need to bring up the bar on information? And everybody's got to do it. It's not just one side or the other. It's going to take all of us to put it together. I'm trying to read all of the comments as they're scrolling past us.
Well, I think we hit a good one today, because we're certainly getting comments. Now, there's a couple of comments that I've noticed that already came in. There's one, Stephen C. makes a mention. Problem is that all of the software providers are not ready with this new 3.6 format. How can you roll out a new 3.6 when no one is even ready, i.e. the software itself? Yes, there are some hiccups and hurdles to that. I think the last update we got was a few weeks ago. There was some conversation surrounding that. I think something to keep in mind is that we're not in full launch mode, which is to say, you do not need to be using 3.6 tomorrow. We did start to pilot this. I shouldn't say we. This isn't a we thing. I'm not part of the program, but nevertheless, the GSEs and whomever started to pilot this out, starting as of last fall. There's been additional workup for all of that. We're sort of in a soft launch phase of this right now until just early into 26. By end of January, early February of 26 is when we really start rolling out the larger transition of that. The real drop dead date for all of this is starting November of next year. So we're just outside of a full year until 3.6 is the function. And that's supposed to kick, it rolls over a weekend, 31st. We were just talking about conference dates for next year anyway. Monday, November 2nd of next year is going to be the date that 3.6 is here. It is full on, and the only thing the prior 2.6 report is going to be cleanup work. It's going to be revisions and whatnot. Everything new generation forward at that point is going to be 3.6. So the good news is we do have still the better part of this next year to really work out the kinks of all of this. And really, we've got 3 or 4 months left before we even really start to broaden the approach of what's going to happen with it all. That's going to help. But at the same time, that comes fast, right? I mean, that's 3 months is going to be over in a heartbeat, and November 2nd of next year is going to be here before we know it too, which is why this conversation needs to keep ongoing. It needs to be ongoing and evolving conversation to make sure that everybody is getting ready for all of this.
Okay, so we talk about adopting this. When we ever look at any technology, we have the early adopters. Okay, we have the ones who are willing to step off the cliff and hope that their parachute works and get this done. And then we had the more cautionary people who probably the beginning of the year we'll start to see people starting to switch over. And then we're going to have those late bloomers who are in an absolute panic in a year going, oh my goodness, I have to do this. Everybody here, and Craig and I kind of been preaching it. We need to all talk about this. We can't hide it under a basket somewhere over in the corner. We got to be talking about it and interacting. And I've seen where Kathy L said, get involved with your MLS. If you're on the appraisal side, get involved with MLS. If you're on the sales side, get involved discussing what's going on. Go listen to people. Go talk to people. Collaborate. We used to be friends, guys. I started years ago and we did everything together. Appraisers, agents, brokers, everybody. And then we kind of split off. I think we're going to have to come back and talk. We're going to have to come back to a center line. Whoa. Okay. Craig, what's your next topic?
I think the biggest thing for me, I actually just saw a comment from Donna come in, and I see it's Donna H, and I'm 99.9% sure I know Donna.
I know Donna.
and she's right. Let's be very clear about this. His comment is, we've been preaching correct, accurate, and full listing sheets for decades, as well as communication from agents and brokers. Still does not happen. How can we expect this will change? I have a couple of answers for that, and they're probably both unsatisfying. The reality of it is, here's how that's going to change. The appraisal's not going to get done, and the deal's not going to go through. That might wake some people up, because if it can't get completed and the appraiser communicates through to whomever ordered, whether it's an appraisal management company, whether it's direct from lender, whoever ordered the report, well, what's going on with this? Why is it taking so long? Hey, I've tried 5 or 6 times. That agent's not calling me back. I can't get this done. That's going to sound some bells and alarms, okay? The other thing here, too, is I think at the risk of carrying water for somebody or an organization that I don't need to be carrying water for. Candy is very involved with the NAR. I am not. I am an NAR member. I am a member of all sorts of groups, but I'm not here to carry the water for anyone. That said, the NAR Code of Ethics requires agents to practice due diligence and to ensure that they are inputting correct and accurate information. And I have begun to see already at local area associations and at state level associations, Code of Ethics charges brought for inaccurate or incomplete information.
Mm-hmm.
Shaking my magic 8-ball, I think we're going to see more of that. Because absent that, it's not necessarily something that the state license board is going to pick up in a scenario. They're going to look at it and go, that's not really our department. It's a Code of Ethics problem. I think we're finding that the local area associations, the state level associations are taking that more seriously, looking into that more. And again, I think for the appraisers that are watching, this is an opportunity to become more active with your local area associations and your MLSs. We did this recently when I think we were at NAR in, I don't remember if it was earlier this year or if it was last fall, whatever, one of these events. And apparently shocked a number of appraisers in the room who didn't actually realize that they're realtors, because they are. As a dues-paying member of NAR and as an appraiser, you get to be a realtor. Agents, as a dues-paying member and a license holder as an agent or a broker in whatever state you are, you get to be a realtor. I don't get to be. I have to pay dues. I don't even get to use the cool little tag. But you all can. If we see more of that, if appraisers actually start stepping into this fold and recognizing that they are also realtors and start pushing it through those channels in their associations, I think we're going to see more impact from that.
Okay, Craig, you hit on a couple things. So we've got a mixture of people on here. We know that. And yes, I seem to have been tagged to be the one to be active in NAR. I was named vice chair of the Real Property Valuation Committee for next year. Big shoes to fill. And some of the things I preach, and sometimes I make appraisers mad because they say, well, you're siding with the agents. I think we need to recognize that it's going to take both sides working on this. So Article 1 of the Code of Ethics, which if you're a realtor, everybody has to abide by it, places the client interest above all others. Okay. So if you don't return the phone call to get the appraisal done, to get the house sold, to get this transaction done, hello, how are you taking care of your clients? Okay. Article 12 says we can't be misleading in our advertisement. We have to present a true picture. So if we don't bother to put the correct information in, how are we doing our job? Truly. And I go into this over and over and over with all sides of this. And I know that the appraisers work for the lenders, but the lenders wouldn't have any clients if they didn't have buyers and sellers. And then I'm going to throw the other thing in. Buyers want to buy and sellers want to sell, and everybody else screws it up. Just saying. Just kind of putting this out there. So, yeah, we've got to figure out how this conversation comes back and goes together. And we need to educate. We need to talk. We need to explain. Maybe take some agents out and show them what it looks like to do one of these inspections. Okay. Maybe help the appraisers to understand what it takes to go to try to get the homeowner to give you the true facts about the house. We had a question that was brought up before this started about broadband.
Right. That's an issue.
Who knows what's what? If you're rural, some of you guys may be, I was, and the guy who owned the broadband in my area decided he was tired of everybody and he turned it off. Turned off the towers, turned off everything. And in an hour, I went from broadband to dial-up. Just saying. Do we know what's out there? And do we understand that it can be crazy? And what does Starlink do with us? I don't know. What is that question?
Well, and that's an interesting facet of this, right? So for the folks that are unclear about the broadband part, one of the functions of this dynamic reporting format is going to be a question as to whether or not the subject property has access to broadband. Curiously, I think Candy just pointed out where some of the friction is going to come in on that question. I think there is a follow-up question to that, which is how long is that information going to be material or relevant as a function of valuation or underwriting? Look, the reality of it is, does Fannie and Freddie really care whether a property has broadband? No, of course not. But does current legislation in place that produces incentives and relates to access to government funding, does that care about whether or not there's access to broadband? Absolutely. I mean, I assure you, the folks at the GSEs aren't sitting around going, what are some other extraneous questions we can throw at this thing? and have them fill in info. At the end of the day, the question has less to do with, is this something that's truly a valuation metric, and is this a concern about access to funding that might have something to do with a loss and how we cure a loss and a replacement or something along those lines. So even then, some of the questions that are asked as a part of this process, some of the subject matter that is being raised is not a it's not specifically a valuation question, but it is absolutely a risk analysis question. And so that's part of the mindset that I think needs to come along with all of this too, whether you're an appraiser, whether you're an agent, whether you're both, depending on the day, is we're getting asked different questions differently now. But there's a reason, there's a thought behind all of that. Now, there's a question as to, is that really the appraiser's job? From a pure valuation perspective, I think the argument there, it's not hard to make the argument, no, that's absolutely not the appraiser's job. If, as somebody else commented, though, earlier, the appraiser is the eyes and ears of the
Yes.
lender. So in terms of providing information for risk assessment on the collateral to secure a loan, is it that? That might be. Is that a USPAP question? I don't think you're going to find anything about broadband in USPAP, but you're going to find a scope of work rule, and you're going to find a scope of work rule that says you're going to have an agreed upon scope of work in order to perform the assignment. And if that's an assignment condition that triggers a requirement under your scope of work rule, you're going to find your way to either meeting that scope and exceeding it or not. And that's how all of this stuff starts to become bundled together at some point. The agents, who are perhaps not nearly as familiar with USPAP standards, scope of work, the enforceability of all of that, the enforceability of assignment conditions from the particular lenders or from the GSEs down, some of this stuff is going to look odd and foreign to you. But trust me, your appraiser is going to need to get an answer to that question, or they're not going to be able to move forward. And this thing is going to get hung up in the pipeline again. So this all goes back to the idea of accuracy, cooperation, and being collaborative amongst the groups in order for all of this to work itself out and continue forward.
I saw something that went by about scope creep and questions and all of this. A bit of trivia coming from one of the old ancient ones here. We've always had to put census tracts in as long as I can remember. I used to have the maps that were about the size of my car that I had to look on. And I was hired in January by one of my clients to go look up census tracts to be sure that the right ones had been provided. And I finally said, why do you do this? I'm not sure everybody understands part of the reasoning but the Community Reinvestment Act, which says that lenders have to lend in all areas, uses the census tract information to prove they're doing their job. So just think about it. Why do we have to know what the census tract is? Just asking. It's not there. It's a scope creep from 25, 30 years ago. When we started checking on those things, that's where we're bringing this forward. Yes, it's scope creep, but it can be we got all kinds of stuff. Agents have it, appraisers have it, lenders have it, inspectors have it. Everybody's got it. So if you don't want the scope creep, I hate to say it, go find another job. And it's all the way across.
Right. And to part of it is, and again, as dissatisfying answer as this is, if this is not the scope that you're going to want to adhere to, then these sorts of residential mortgage lending assignments may not be for you. I mean, that lends itself into, look, are we going to see appraisers getting out of appraising as a result of all of this? Now, that's been How long have you been hearing that question at this point? I always tell people I came into this at exactly the right time or the wrong time, depending upon how you feel about that. I was a transactional attorney. I was handling residential closings, small commercial stuff, strip malls, outlots, you name it. The garden variety stuff that you're going to find urban, suburban, Chicagoland area. And then we stopped having transactions, and that was basically the fall of 2007. So I needed to go find another job, went through the process, looked at a couple of things, found out really quickly I cannot be a divorce attorney. That was not going to be a way for me to get out of bed every morning and put food on the table. Happened to find a job, though, in government. I went into work for the state license agency as their prosecutor. And I did that the Thursday before Bear Stearns collapsed. I have worked with appraisals for a long time now. I had worked with appraisals in the transactional context, and then I became the regulatory prosecutor that was handling these files. All I know is that for as long as I've been in this, I have heard, well, in 5 years, there's just not going to be any more appraisers doing this. In 5 years, there's not going to be any more appraisers doing this. Well, coming up on 20 years later, we're still in 5 years, there's not going to be any more appraisers doing this. Sure, there are, to some extent. But is it the same number? Absolutely not. When I started in Illinois, we had 7,500, almost 8,000 appraisers. We're sub 3,000 now. Most of the other states have seen a similar fall off in the amount of credentials, whether that's because of state licensure programs cut or non-renewals of people in the residential space and all of that. I'd say largely the commercial folks, the certified general license holders, those numbers have held fairly strong.
Yeah.
Where the fall-offs have occurred in a couple of spots were in the residential space. I expect we're going to see some disruption here again, but there's likely going to be enough appraisers around who are going to continue pushing this work forward. I mean, if there's anything, I don't wish ill for anyone, but look, if this means that some of the form fillers are going to get out of the way, and some of the true appraisers out there who have always taken their assignment seriously, if they're going to go out and they're going to go ahead and get the opportunity to take these assignments and complete them thoroughly with proper analyses and reporting, that's actually probably better for everybody at the end of the day, because we're going to have more accurate valuations and we're going to get the form fillers out of the way. We may see some of that disruption here.
Okay, a couple things. I'm going to come back to Linda B's comment, but first I'm going to say we're going to see an attrition on all kinds of licenses. Okay, yes. We had blossomed up to 1.6 million realtors. We're projecting 1.2. We're seeing a drop off in Texas on the licenses and stuff. This has been going on. Guys, I went into appraising in 1988 because development fell apart, and that's where I had started. And then it fell apart again with appraisers, so I went into doing environmental site assessments. Oh, Lord. And then I've transitioned. I was trained to do different things, to do all of the different parts of real estate as the need arose. So let's just all remember that the world goes up and down. It always has. It always will. We'll just, our markets do this, okay? And our jobs do that along with it. It just happens. Now, Linda B said, just to be clear, appraisers are not realtors. Actually, that's incorrect. Realtors is a membership. It is not a license. And if you pay dues to the National Association of Realtors, you can be a broker, an agent, or a certified or licensed appraiser. Those are the 4 technical groupings. And if you are in that, you have the right to be a member of the National Association of Realtors.
And you are subject
to
the Code of Ethics for realtors if you are a dues-paying member of the organization in one of those 4 categories, which is a common misconception. And I think I understand what I think I understand where Linda was coming from, because the common misconception is I'm not an agent or a broker in this context. I am an appraiser, and that is 100% correct. And there is a distinction there. However, for those who are members of the organization, which in most cases indicates if you are a dues paying member of the MLS, in order to get that access, you are likely then also the member of a local area association, which tracks all the way up to NAR. If that, at that point, you probably are a realtor as an appraiser member of some kind. Also, I just recognized in the comments that Danny is here, and I so wish that we could turn the camera and microphone onto him and just get the hell out of the way at this point and let him take the rotten produce. But unfortunately, I don't think we have the platform
We don't have
abilities
that
to do all
possibility.
of that. For any of you who are looking for more information about all of this, though, it appears Danny has put a link in the chat about samples of appraisal reports. If you have interest in seeing those, perhaps you should go click on that link, because that's about as close to coming from the source as you could possibly have. So for those who have interest in actually seeing what this format is going to look like, I would encourage you to click through and check that out. You can probably even do it with hearing the dulcet tones of our voices in the background while you scan that thing. But I encourage you to check that out, because that'll be a good visual for folks who have not had an opportunity to see any of this stuff yet.
You
So
mentioned Danny, but you didn't say who Danny really was. Can we say his name and who he's associated with so that people have an understanding?
I'll tell you what, I will look at the comments here, and if Danny says yes, I will reveal his true identity. Needless to say, you and I know him.
Yes.
So while we're waiting to see whether or not he's cool with that, what I'll also mention here is, as we're working our way through this, and I guess that takes us into a conversation about Fannie and Freddie as we evolve through our discussions here today. What is your thought process on how we are going to see the impact of UAD reporting impact the overall volume of appraisals within the Fannie and Freddie space? I'm asking for this is a magic 8-ball moment on your end. I recognize that. So I'm asking you to predict the future.
I just think you threw a bomb in the middle of the room.
Do we know that yet, though?
We don't. We don't. But one of the things, Craig, that you and I have come up with is that we're hearing that there may be some more waivers coming. And so these appraisal reporting formats may not be as prevalent as what we used to know, where almost every house had an appraisal. Is this what you were kind of touching on, where we're starting to move away from?
In part, because I think you and I think are hearing the same things on this, and so I'll come right out and say it. I think every time we turn around, we are hearing, and it tends to be more of the rumor variety, but we are hearing that this is yet another step in the process of eliminating the appraiser, eliminating the appraisal, that this portends that they're going to be moving on to other things. This is yet another data scrape of the process, and that there's not going to be all of these appraisal assignments anymore. I will say I've been hearing that for a long time already anyway. I mean, look, what the UAD, the current data set, when I alluded to the idea that one of the changes in the reporting process was 2009, when there was a new coding system that went into place for the non-appraisers in the room. That was a uniform appraisal data set, UAD, came out. And that was late 2009, early 2010, if I recall correctly, was about when all of that happened. Well, look, again, that was the next thing. That this is all this is. It's a data scrape. In 5 years, there's not going to be any more appraisers because they're going to take all the data because of the UAD. Well, okay, that was 15 years ago. I do think from a purpose of aggregating data and analyzing trends, that's a huge component of all of that. I do think that's a motivator behind it, but I personally don't believe it's done with the intent of eliminating appraisers and appraisals. I don't think that's ever truly been the case. That said, is it going to impact which assignments actually needed a full-blown appraisal, which can be analyzed differently? Sure, we've got multiple years of millions of transactions all homogenized for data sets at this point. There is, to some extent, an ability to do risk analysis based off of broader trend lines. To some extent, isn't that what we've always been doing all along, though? Why are we reporting on is this a stable, increasing, or decreasing market? Like we've always been in a position that we have to analyze a data set and identify trends anyway. Is that part of the process significantly more automated than it ever has been? Yeah, certainly. I mean, we've got the computing power, we've got the algorithms to some extent to be able to do that. But I can tell you right now, from what I see, when claims arise, when it's a license board complaint or when it's a lawsuit, if I'm sitting in the city of Chicago right now, if I were to go down into this neighborhood or that neighborhood, or go up to this neighborhood or that neighborhood, or go over to this neighborhood and that neighborhood that was all built in a 4-year span of 3 models of houses for an 8-block radius, I don't have a whole lot of questions about that one. The analytics tools can probably get a broad sense of what the market trend is. The second you start to run into any complexity in this whatsoever, i.e., things have been changed interior wise over the last 60 years, and now this thing's a bit of a unicorn, the algorithm is not really teed up for that. The human component, human observation, analysis, and judgment is still going to be a necessity there in these types of assignments. And I do believe those are the appraisals that are still going to be out there, whether it's 2.6 or 3.6, that eliminating the human out of this entirely isn't a problem. And Miss Diana just asked an interesting question there, which was, can a borrower file suit against the algorithm? That is the right question.
Absolutely.
Who remembers why we license appraisers? It's because of the S&L crisis. And we had to put some credentials in place so that we could certify that certain individuals have been granted permission. Remember, a license does not grant or confer competency. It confers permission. But we limited that subset of people to those who hold licenses.
Yep.
The moment there is a liability event and there is no errors and omissions policy at the end of that liability rainbow, I assure you, appraisers are going to be very much in vogue again. All right. And I think Miss Diana's question there is the right one. Lenders are not going to be able to sue their own computers. And so when there are losses, when there is a funding gap, and when there is an attempt to make whole, somebody has to be there. I'm in the middle of a lawsuit right now on a commercial loan with a restaurant that went bad, that conveniently ran into COVID. Surely everybody knows that that restaurant failed during a global pandemic because the appraiser had the site size wrong. Logically, it's the only thing that could have caused that business loss, right? Well, look, we're all just groaning and rolling our eyes every moment that we're dealing with this stuff. But the reality of it is, from the perspective of the group that's stuck holding the bag and looking to plug a funding hole, they are looking at any other contributors that might be able to throw even pennies on the dollar to help plug that hole. This is the darker, seedier side of all of this. And I hesitate to be the doom and gloom guy all the time. I don't think I necessarily am, but I think that is a reality that we have to address here.
Yep.
This doesn't do anyone good. Now, good. Look, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? If everything is more accurate and the risk analysis is done better and everything continues to improve from that end, great. Then we're going to have less liability events. And I wholeheartedly believe that is a goal, that is an intent, a purpose behind all of this. Some of these things that we've heard the wailing and gnashing of teeth from appraisers about some of the requirements of this new reporting format. Oh, I can't believe I have to do this. Oh, I can't believe I'm going to need to do that. As I said earlier, some of this is stuff that was always supposed to be done. And so the format is just not going to allow the appraiser to get away with not doing the things that they always should have been doing all along. From that standpoint, that's going to close some doors to liability. It's going to lead us away from that risk of, if I just put NA here, or if I just gloss over it, nobody really reads that box anyway. No, that's going to be gone. You're not going to be able to advance. You can't get through this. It's going to help plug that hole. But on the back end of this, we cannot kid ourselves and think for a second that the human component of this is gone forever. The above board positive reason is because the difficulty with complex assignments and the necessity of human judgment is going to be at a premium. The downside of all of this is there needs to be an E&O policy somewhere at the end of that liability chain. That's just the reality of it. It sounds bad. I recognize that, but it's how I keep the lights on, quite frankly, at the office, is we know the phone's going to ring eventually, and a question like that is going to come across the wire. We're going to have to roll up our sleeves and get involved again.
All right. So I caught how you were talking about it, the form fillers. We've had them on both sides of this topic. The people who put in the minimum required information in MLS. I always like when I open up a listing and there's nothing. Okay. And then we have the appraisers on the other side. And I'm sure that some of the people in here have run into these things where there were fraudulent appraisals, fraudulent listings. We've got all of this. Somebody's always trying to figure out a way to make a quick buck. And what I see is I think this new reporting is going to try to clean up one section, but it's going to make the other side clean up also, where, that seller's disclosure. In Texas, we have a seller's disclosure that you got to fill out. Well, guess what? The appraisers can look at those because on those disclosures, it talks about who gives electricity, who has broadband, who has all of those different things. We're going to be trading information back and forth, and we got to quit being mad at each other. And if somebody's being a form filler, maybe try to give as much information so that your clients are going to get a good report that goes back to the bank so they can get their loan so they can buy the house. Okay. It just takes all of us to do this.
Yeah. I mean, I want to encourage the appraisers out there to enter into the process, enter into the assignment with a good, thoughtful data sheet that you can present to whomever your contact is at the property and go, hey, this is information I'm going to need from you in order to complete this. This might be support for recent renovations and changes. This might be a variety of other things. Who knows? Maybe the broadband question finds its way on there. There still needs to be data verification for all of these things, but it can certainly help the process along. But to the agents in the room, I can't stress enough how important it is to actually take the time, fill that stuff out, give that to the appraiser who's asking so that they can do their job and do their job well. And so again, to your point, I think, yeah, it's all participants in this are going to have to cooperate and are going to have to be collaborative in this process in order for everybody to get through it. Or if not, then I think we'll see those liability events too. I don't know what it's going to look like the first time we get a breach of fiduciary duty claim against an agent for failing to cooperate in the lending process. I don't know how that's going to read yet, but I'm fairly confident at some point we're going to see one of those. The appraisers already know where the liability is. They've heard about it. They've seen it. They know what that complaint looks like. There's nothing new under the sun there. But for the agents, I think there is an inherent liability there as well, which still falls under acting in the best interests of the client that they're representing. But what are those best interests? Getting the lenders accurate information so that they can underwrite the loan and get the deal done. And I think we're going to see that leap into this is now something that attaches to the agent as well.
Okay. Okay. We're just talking this all the way around, Craig, and we're into the last 5 minutes. I think that going forward, I think we're going to have to raise the bar. I talk about it in my classes. We need to protect the consumers. Consumers don't understand all of the things going on. We deal with this every day. I don't care what hat you're wearing. We deal with it every day. Why don't we try to get to a point where we have people who are putting all of this stuff out there? We do the best job you can, because there are some, and I'm going to say it this way, there are some skippies out there in all parts who aren't doing their job. So why don't you guys be the best of the best and take the work away from the people who are lazy? Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think you were awfully kind to call them skippies. I think we usually have another word for that, but it's probably not. It's probably not fit for consumption in a polite and mixed audience here. I do think, though, here's a concern I always have. This prompts heartburn, which is the folks that have taken the time out of their day to get on a webinar like this and watch it are, for better or for worse, maybe not always the people that need to get this message either. I mean, the fact that you're even listening to this garbage is you get it. You understand that this is important. You know that you need to be asking this question and you need to be learning. So that's great. The question then becomes, how do we get this out to all of the folks who aren't taking their time and aren't availing themselves of this? I swear this happened. We were in DC back in June for NAR. And while I was walking around town, I had my phone lighting up all day from an appraiser here in Illinois who has been a client of mine in the past. Craig, have you seen this? Did you know that they're changing the forms? Have you heard about this? Did you see what they're doing? June of 2025. And this appraiser just had their "we landed on the moon" moment. Okay. We've been talking about this for 8 years. We've been talking about it loudly for 3 to 4. And at that moment, the only thing I could think, well, there were two thoughts. One, I understand how you ultimately had to retain me for my legal services. And two, I'm just glad you're in that room. Take good notes, right? I think the appraisers are getting hit over the head with this enough now, because now education is rolled out, right? This is 3.6. This is what you need to know. Get your butt in the seat. Go take the classes. I have a concern, and I think Donna just reflected in the comments a concern. How do we get this to the agents and brokers and get it in their lap? Because this is not common knowledge necessarily amongst the vast majority of practitioners in that space. The ones that are in the know and they're asking questions. How do we do this for the folks that aren't in the know? Can we use our influences? You're important, I'm not. Can we use our influences at NAR or at state level orgs to push this out? I know at Arrow, which is the Association of Appraisal Regulatory Officials. They had their fall meeting just a couple of weeks ago in Atlanta. I know a heavy part of the focus at those meetings for all the state licensing agencies and administrators and whomever. I know those folks got a heavy dose of UAD 3.6, which was good because they need to know that the world is changing for them too. So that's being addressed now. It's been on the docket for a while, but they're really finally getting it. How do we get this to the other folks as well?
Absolutely. So we're going to preach, Craig. We're going to preach. And we're going to have to put it out there. Anybody who's an educator, get classes out there. Anybody who's out there working in groups where they're running into the other side, we got to talk. That's all. Okay, you got any last comments?
My only comments are to all of the folks that attended today, which we can see it on the background. It's actually huge turnout, huge attendance today. And so I would say, obviously, that indicates, I think, that this is a topic of interest, which is fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for joining today and participating. Been actually a wildly active comment section. I sort of only wish we could have addressed more of them.
Absolutely.
But hopefully we got to some of the high points. There is more certainly coming on this in the coming months and over the next year. So stay tuned. Keep your eyes and ears open for any information you're getting from your state orgs, from your state coalitions, from whomever. It's all going to matter. And for the folks that are out there in the wild that you interact with that don't know as much about this, take it to the masses. Broadcast this to the folks who aren't sitting in here. I mean, I'm not saying show them a video clip of us talking, but feed them the information. They need it too. And the only way it's going to get to them is not going to be from us. It's going to be from all of you bringing this back into your communities, your peer groups, your networking. Do that, carry it forward, and make sure people know what's up.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I'm totally with you, Craig. Let's just keep having the conversations. We are all going to be here. We'll do this again and again. Ben, would you like to say goodbye?
I would. I'd like to thank you both for your time. Thank you all for attending and for your participation and all the comments. We will do this again. We hope to do it again very soon with Craig and Candy. This is being recorded, and we'll send it out to y'all in just a minute. The same link that you used to get here will give you access to the recording. Have a great day. We'll see you again soon.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.